Social movement has a key role in supporting the participation and inclusion of all persons with disabilities. Now, with the advance of the internet today, especially on social media, their voices can be heard significantly without limits. And Bully Space is a social activist that advocates disability advocacy and awareness movement on Twitter, which is now officially registered and working as a social enterprise. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good evening to our audience who have joined us today. So, for our webinars on protecting and empowering persons with disabilities, my name is Noor Sarasofia as a moderator along with Noor Anis Adila, and we are communication student from International Islamic University Malaysia Gombak. We would like to welcome you, our two keynote speakers, respectively from Boleh Space Movement, which socially active on Twitter that willingly to share their opinions and voice for our today's webinar. And also, thank you for the viewers who joined in and supporting for our today's webinar on the theme of disabilities, inclusion, protection and empowerment of persons with disabilities. So, for today's webinar, we have two respective speakers here with us, which are Miss Yana and Mr. Nasrul. So, how are you guys today?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for inviting us.
And we have
Alhamdulillah,
also,
thank you for having us today.
okay, oh, you are welcome. And Alhamdulillah. So, disability movement on social media is a platform that can also help Malaysia to become a world trendsetter in disability inclusion and rights. So, without further ado, let's start our webinar by introducing our keynote speaker. So, maybe we can start with Miss Yana. Could you introduce a bit about yourself to the audience?
Hi, Assalamualaikum. I'm Yana Karim. I'm Malacca born and raised. I spent some time in KL, but I'm now living back in Malacca after I became disabled. I became physically disabled about 10 years ago. With the help of the internet, I worked from home way back before COVID-19 happened and people started staying home. And I have been advocating for disability inclusion for the past year.
Great. And we also have Mr. Nasrul. So, could you introduce to the audience?
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good evening to everyone who are watching. Thank you for having us today. And also, I am Muhammad Nasrul bin Muhammad Noor. You can call me Nasrul. And also, I am from Ipoh, Perak, currently residing in Perak and having an online class. Okay, and also, I am a student, a postgraduate student at the International Islamic University Malaysia, and also specializing in employment discrimination. My course currently I am taking coursework and also research mode, which is also known as mixed mode in MHSSA, or Masters of Human Sciences in Sociology and Anthropology. And also, I am currently Chief Technology Officer of Police Space and also a disability advocate. And Miss Yana Karim here, she is the CEO or Chief Executive Officer of Police Space.
Okay, all right. Since we have here with us the co-founder and the CEO of Boleh Space, Miss Yana, could you tell us a bit about the initial idea of or formation of Boleh Space and the vision of Boleh Space? What does Boleh Space advocate? Since Boleh Space started during the Movement Control Order 2020, maybe Miss Yana can start.
Yeah. Nara Shahab and I co-founded Boleh Space after seeing the lack of disability inclusion in guidelines and SOPs at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Before that, we were just Twitter friends. sharing our life experiences as disabled Malaysians. Just hanging out online on Twitter. All our activities were fully coordinated and done online. And except for just a few of us, none of us have met each other. I've never met Nasrul in person too. Uh, Including Nara, I haven't met her too. So after doing mostly raising awareness on Twitter, now we are officially registered and working as a social enterprise, as a partnership since June last year. Yes. Well, uh, like I said just now, that we initially started doing disability awareness, mostly on current issues, anything that was trending. But we find that it's not enough. So we started doing advocacy directly, engaging with people, engaging with university students, our next generation leaders, hopefully, inshallah, and with the hope that we can um, inspire a more inclusive Malaysia that won't leave anyone behind. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure since lockdown or MCO 2020, so Boleh Space has made several programs. Could you share with us what are some of programs that have been organized by Boleh Space in a way that to help persons with disabilities? Maybe we can start with Mr. Nasrul first.
Okay, sure, no worries. Okay, so basically, we organize webinars called Space on YouTube, I can say. So it happens once every month, or I can say monthly. And also, besides, we also are involved several podcasts, some podcasts advocating for disability rights and also for persons with disabilities in general. Organize some of them quite notable, which is I can say United Nations Population Fund (UNFPA) and also BFM and several other mass media.
Okay, how about Miss Yana?
Um, like Naso said just now, we were focusing on the monthly space. We call it space because boleh space. We initially started as Twitter space again space, as Twitter space, but then we realized that that's not very inclusive because there's no BRM interpreter. Today we have no BRM interpreter, but I understand that our moderator said that there will be how to say captions later, right, Shamwa? So thank you very much for that. So um, after we noticed that it's not very inclusive, we tried to use how to say we tested out several options. So we tried Google Meet and then Zoom, but then we realized that Zoom is most inclusive because back before COVID happened, apparently Zoom developers were working with several disabled people who were using Zoom regularly. So they were guiding the Zoom developers on how to make Zoom accessible, and that is why we are utilizing Zoom. We are utilizing Zoom. I just remembered that we are using StreamYard today. So yeah, one of the things that we like to remind people is that if you include disabled people from the beginning, you will everyone will benefit. So that means you leave no one behind, and that's what we keep saying: leave no one behind. And another several other programs that we joined, it was mostly to increase our own awareness and understanding of how to advocate properly. So some of the programs were organized by UN SCAP, and what do you call it, UNICEF, as well as there was a program by Undi 18. That was how I met Nasrul. Actually, we were in the same workshop. We were the facilitators. That so from that particular workshop, that was the start of Boleh Space advocacy, and onwards we started doing more partnerships with other organizations. I was also a speaker in the international what was it? IDEP. Let me check back the name. But there were several programs that started being aware that they need disabled speakers. So we ourselves were needed to make sure that we know how to advocate properly. So that was the reason why we joined programs. And now, inshallah, yes, International Day of Eradication of Poverty. It was organized by Yayasan Sejahtera. So previously, when we talk about disability as well as inclusion, it's mostly within the disabled community. Now, we see a lot more people are interested and wanting to learn and wanting to talk to and with us, not just talk over us. So that's what we've been focusing on. Yeah.
Sorry, Anis, what are you saying? Sorry.
It's okay, sorry. So we understand that your organization is advocating for amendments and reviews to be made on the Person with Disability Act 2008. So we are interested to know more about the PwD Act 2008 that bully space advocates, which need to be amended in order to empower PwDs. Could you explain further about this? Maybe Mr. Nasrul can start.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so basically, thank you, Anis. Okay, basically, in terms of Persons with Disability Act 2008, is actually I can say it is kind of based from the United Nations Conventions of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or UNCRPD, that we ratified in 2000. I think it's the same year, right, Yana? Or in 2006, eh? 7. Okay. In 2007. So basically, based on the ratification, Malaysian government, they decided, okay, we need to have the Persons with Disability Act. But regarding with the UNCRPD, there are some reservations done, which means it is not taken into place, or they didn't, or we didn't sign it. So basically, in terms of Persons with Disability Act, it seems that the disabled have their rights protected by this act. It just seems like that actually. The real problem arises when what? When the act itself is it is considered as administrative act only. So when it is considered as administrative act only, it happens that there are some of the clauses. It's just like, for example, if someone tell you this, you tell the people, oh, you cannot discriminate the persons with disabilities, or the disabled people, or disabled person. But I ask back, if you discriminate them, then what happened? Nothing. Because the act itself sometimes is against us. The act is for us, but sometimes it's against us. Why I say that? Because okay, the two clauses, I can say there are several clauses that can be amended or should be amended, but I want to focus on two, which is first and foremost Article 41 and Article 42, focusing on the Malaysian's government, in which they said that none or no action can be taken for whatsoever reason to the government or any government entities or any government agencies, if there is any breach of the act, or I can say if there is any breach of terms of discrimination and whatnot. So the thing is, when that happens, it causes we to not be protected by the law. So basically, as I say, it is an administrative act, and non-action, no action can be taken. For example, if for example one of the person was discriminated in the workplace, okay, since I focused in disability discrimination, especially in terms of employment discrimination, and also that will be my topic of my research, inshallah. Based on that, actually, what can I say from my readings and also my own experience and several others' experience related to work and employment of persons with disabilities? When we said about work and employment, there are lots of things to be considered. For example, how the persons with disabilities are being accommodated in the workplace. That's another question. The accessibility of the part in terms of, I will relate later in terms of the challenges, because I know that most likely we will have questions about challenges later. So basically, in terms of employment, most like they are most likely to be discriminated, and it is related with the term called ableism itself, in which will be said later as well. And in terms of employment, I can say that uh, sometimes they are considered, or they are stigmatized or discriminated and considered not productive enough. Because of what? Because of persons with disabilities, sometimes they take like 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 non-disabled, the disabled take the MC. But when the disabled take the MC, they consider it to become non-productive. But if the non-disabled take, then nothing for them. That is what happens in terms of employment. Besides that, the persons with mental disability or persons with mental disorder, they also face some, I can say, some more discrimination compared to the persons with disabilities in general. But I didn't say that persons with disabilities doesn't experience any challenges or doesn't experience any discrimination. They do, but persons with mental disorder or mental disability, there are different. Those are two different terms actually. Having mental disorder and having mental disability. If we see PWMD, I can say as the short form, persons with mental disability. It according to the JKM or the Department of Social Welfare, it should be around 2 years in treatment by the psychiatric, if I'm not mistaken, right, Yana? Okay, that's for the persons with
Yes.
mental disability. So basically, what happens when
And
they are being
specialized
employed?
only, not anyone. There must be a specialist
Mm,
psychiatrist. I can't really remember the term,
specialist
but
or
yeah.
psychiatrist. Okay, and also what happens to them is I was interviewing this one person before, and he said the first thing that the HR or the interviewer asked, "Are you fit to work?" Instead of ask, "How can we assist or accommodate you in that company?" That was his experience regarding terms of employment. And believe me, persons with disabilities or disabled person are having a difficult time to get work because they are deemed, oh, we cannot take the persons with disabilities. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. Uh, and also, based on my own experience, when I was searching for work during my final year in IIUM, because I was IIUM the graduates as well. Okay, and previously I saw that, okay, this place, there is I don't want to mention any organizer of the career fair, but there is one career fair that I've went to, and you know what happened was like, okay, the persons with physical disability, okay, this one only. The person with mental disability, for example, this only this particular sector accept it, of that particular company only. So, and also, for example, like the person who determine who and how, or who will be there, is the company itself, which I can say not necessarily that they have knowledge about the I can say about the persons with disability at all, or I can say maybe they have, but just on the surface, just a superficial understanding, and they just can say, okay, this person can work, this person cannot work. My question is, who are you to determine that? Uh, it's it's we who are working, and my question was like, why you should do this and that. That is my question back them. Okay. I think that's enough for me in terms of because I going into the employment, because employment is one of the important aspect of the act itself. It's one of the important aspect, and also in terms of the Akta Kerja 1995 or the Employment Act 1955, we are not protected against discrimination in workplace. Not only PWD Act should be amended, there are several other acts also should be amended together with this act so it can be more efficient. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nasrul, for the insightful answer. Like I can summarize is Boleh Space is focused on the Act of 41 and 42. And since Mr. Nasrul had mentioned about ableism just now, so there's I believe that some of the viewers might not know what is ableism, and maybe this is like their first time hearing it. So could you explain more about ableism and what is your thoughts and how do you counterback with the ableism? Does it related
Okay.
to awareness to the society towards PWD?
Okay, so basically, first thing first, I would like to clarify, we are not only focusing on these two acts, we are advocating as much as we can. But for today, for the sake of discussion, I will focus on 41 and 42 because that is one of the, I can say, most problematic right now lah. Uh, Seeing the condition right now, that is what we can discuss for today. And also, in terms of ableism, so what does ableism? Okay, I quote from accessliving.org. They said, okay, I can say that what they mentioned from that is it is a discrimination and a form of social prejudice against persons with disabilities. Like I said earlier, uh, the persons with disabilities, okay, they can work this, they can work that, they determine, not the persons with disabilities themselves determine. You can see, right? That is ableism basically. A simplest form of ableism that I can show. Okay, so basically go back to the definition. Based on the belief that typical abilities. That's why I didn't use the word able bodied people and also disabled people. I use the word disabled and non-disabled. I will explain later because there are something important that I need to highlight after this because people always equate, okay, disability equals to impairment, impairment equals to disability, while it's not necessarily to be people use it interchangeably while it's two different or two distinct things. Why? Because there are, even if you go deep into the theoretical foundation, there are theory on that that I can relate, but I don't want to go deep into theory because if I go deep into the theory, this will become a lecture, not a talk lah per se. So basically, at its heart, ableism is rooted in the assumption that disabled people requires fixing, fixing and defines people by their disability, or I can say define people by their impairment. Let me correct their term a little bit there. Defining people by their impairment, not disability. That is ableism. Ableism doesn't define disability, it defines impairment. And it brings us to the understanding of the mixed up. Ableism is the cause of the mixed up, basically. And also, if you see that assumptions, what from where this assumption comes, right? Assumptions must come from something. It comes from the medicalization of disability itself, in which this is a little bit of theory lah, a little bit, not very much, just on the surface. Because if you go deep, there are lots of theories on that, especially in terms of medical anthropology theory. You see, still medical. So basically, we are very medicalized, in which we say that we focus on the impairment itself, not the disability. Impairment is basically uh, the thing that is we see the abnormality, the thing that we can observe on the physical body or psychological. That is impairment. It's not disability. If you say people with disability same with people with impairment, you are wrong. I'm sorry to say, but you are wrong. Because disability, it is more general as it focuses on the barriers that they faced. I will explain later inshallah, because if I explain it now, I don't know what I want to talk later lah. So basically, it brings us to this mixed up of understanding, in which actually explaining about the concepts or perspective of persons with disabilities. There are even, as for now, four perspective on persons with disabilities. For example, one is, I mentioned, medical perspective that I mentioned before. Second one is the social, which focus on the social the social model of disability is what has become the foundation of the word disability itself. It becomes the foundation. And also another is the welfare or tragedy charity perspective. Yes, we always see that, oh, we need to help, we need to help, because the persons with disabilities themselves, they cannot help themselves. That is what the society understand. That's why I said they got mixed up. And because of this tragedy charity perspective, they got into the ableist perspective. This tragedy charity got mixed up with the impairment. It becomes the concept that we define as ableism. But ableism, it can be an umbrella term for any discrimination that the persons with disabilities or disabled person or disabled people, these three words that I've mentioned, these all can be used to define disabled people. Please don't use disability people. It's just grammatically incorrect, and also it's also seems as you are not, like, for example, you are not professional for using that word. Please use these three words only if possible, and avoid use people with impairments, unless you are working as a doctor and you want to target only on the impairment. Mm. Okay, that's all I can say from the concept of ableism.
Okay, so for the next question, maybe I can ask Miss Yana. Do you think that with this ableism, and maybe can we fix the people perceptions towards the idea of PwDs, and what are the underroot causes PwD to get this perception from the public that they are incapable of doing anything?
Sorry, can you repeat that question, please?
My question was, do you think that we can fix the people perceptions towards the idea of PwDs, and what are the causes that PwDs to get the perception from the publics that they are incapable of doing anything?
So basically, you're asking whether how do we change people's mindset? Did I get that right? Okay. Sorry, I'm when I'm tired, I get a bit I find it a bit harder to catch words. Yeah. So like can I just add on to what Nasrul said just now about ableism? Because ableism is such a strange concept in Malaysia that people, Malaysians do not understand what ableism is, because even dalam kamus, even in the Dewan Bahasa Dictionary, the term ableism doesn't exist. The BM term doesn't exist. So one of the ways that we also advocated for is for us to have the discussions openly in BM2. So we propose the term ableism to be to have a proper term in Malay in BM. Let me just check. So yeah, we submitted it 31st March. So hopefully we'll find out soon. Because uh, because we really need to have terms. I mean, if when we talk to translators, mm, during the beginning of COVID, you see a lot of them working really hard to figure out the proper translated word in BM, because we need to have the discussion in BM too, you know. So with the proper term, and properly accepted by Malaysian authority, then the discussion will be made official, and something that can be standardized, instead of this particular organization use some other word lah, like that. So yeah, so that's one thing. So let's go back to the question just now. So uh I don't I have to say that for the past year, especially during the end of the, how many MCOs were there? Because it keeps changing, right? The name MCO and then something 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 CO. So basically, in the beginning, we see a lot more ableist comments, but in on Twitter at least, we see with fellow organizations such as COMM, Minda Kami, and other allies, um, we see that our advocacy raising awareness that you shouldn't use this term, just because you don't like something doesn't mean you should use the term, or she must be OKU. Dia ni mesti OKU, lesen apa dia mesti driver OKU pasal accident or something like that. Because this is part of ableism, but at the same time, people sometimes are not aware of what ableism is. So once we raise awareness, people are a lot more aware. On Twitter at least, we find that there are a lot less incidences of openly um, mocking disabled community, but we still see it in other platforms. Um, for example, was it Instagram or TikTok? The ones that they were mocking, getting OKU parking space by acting out as if he's disabled, as well as the lady who wanted ladies. I forgot. There were several people, right? The ladies who wanted to use disabled toilet and couldn't just behave normally, instead of mocking us and recording it and sharing it online, and we still haven't seen whether there are any punishments for that. Was there police reports done for that? Done reporting them, right? And we didn't see anything happening. So is that okay for them to do? Some other cases of mocking people gets called to court so fast? Is it because of the OKU Act is not working, or is it, do we need the OKU Act? Or it's a complex thing, right? One thing is for sure, we know that the OKU Act is not working because it's mostly guideline. There's no penalties, there's no punishment. If someone doesn't do anything, you should do this. No, there's no specific punishment for anyone. And even like I can't remember how you say it, what the police, what acta is it, what do you call it, Nasrul? Like yeah, the investigating police investigate under something, I forgot the term. So usually when they investigate them,
Dia punya
uh,
charge ke?
yes, kan, under like some kind of section something, kan. Are they
The charge
investigated
for
on,
the criminal conduct, for example.
yeah, like and then okay, so let's move on from that. Now we go to okay, just now I said Twitter is acceptable, but less incidences of ableism, of people mocking disabled people. Less does not mean it's perfect, right? But in the real world, um, we see the poor little girl, Bella, getting apa dera dalam BI? Oh my god, abuse. Yeah, okay, getting abused, and it had to it's disheartening to see it happening to her, especially because we know she's just a small child, and plus she's disabled and should be protected, should be supported instead of being abused. Um, so certain uh, it's kind of hard to talk about this because in the one hand, certain things are better. There are more programs discussing about how people can support OKUs, how employers can include uh, disabled employees in their workplace. But the disabled employees um, are more than likely are not do not have any other choice because for disabled employees it's really hard for us to find a job. Once we get offered something, we tend to assume that that's the only offer that we get, and we find it very hard to leave a current um, job, for example, because um, of the unlikelihood of getting another job somewhere else, right? So that means that we will unhappily stay on and in that current job, even if you get bullied by your friends, by our boss, you know, with no overtime payment, for example, because that's the only job that we are likely to get. So that is not part of Akta OKU, which is why I mentioned it here because that is part of the Akta Kerja. Akta Kerja is apa nama dia term Labour Act. Yep, Labour Act. So they recently added anti-discrimination for pregnant women. If I'm not mistaken, it was approved by the parliament, but they did not include anti-discrimination based on disability or health issue. So that means anyone can discriminate, and you get a job and you're disabled. There's nothing that we can do to complain about the employer, for example, or the co-worker who's bullying a disabled. So um, it's a very complex thing that when we want to advocate for something, we also need to advocate for another thing. It's related, you know. It's like not just one thing. So that's one of the reasons we are trying to learn all the aspects that affect disabled communities, not just what we have experienced, because what we experience personally is just our own lived experience. It does not include what others experience. So on um, I guess some people are just selfish, I guess, that they think that disabled people are less than because have you noticed that sometimes people use the term kelainan upaya, kelainan upaya, or in English it's called apa they call it, different ability. Okay.
Differently able.
Oh
Differently
yeah.
able.
Sorry about that. Yeah, differently able. So the problem with that, they are trying to be nice kononnya, but it's not the reality. What happens is that people start looking at us as different. That's how we feel actually, because what we perceive and what we are totally different. We are disabled. I myself call myself kurang upaya. So 10 years ago, I call myself kelainan upaya. And that was because I was newly disabled. I didn't understand. And at that time, I wasn't able to accept that I was kurang upaya, because we think that kurang upaya is bad. It's actually not. Is what the reality is. It reflects what it is. It reflects me personally because I wasn't able to walk properly at the time. I was using a wheelchair. 100% of the time. And so if you are saying, if at the time I was using kelainan upaya, what is my kelainan upaya? This is a bit controversial. Sometimes people still use kelainan upaya. You might meet people who still use differently able or kelainan upaya. But we at Boleh Space prefer to identify as kurang upaya and disabled as is listed, as is stated in our Akta OKU. So just know that you might meet people who identify as kelainan upaya, and that's fine as long as they themselves identify that way. For example, like I said just now, when I was newly disabled, I use kelainan upaya, right? So at the same time, certain parents still look at their kids, disabled kids, as need having special needs, and so we try to how to say, respect each other, but at the same time, we need to Boleh Space realize the need to for people to not sugarcoat it, and the proper term is kurang upaya. And once we, the disabled community, accepts that, it is actually a bit it's actually empowering in a way, because once you identify as how you say so I myself felt more empowered, though it doesn't make sense sometimes. I find it very hard to explain, because how why would you think that kurang upaya more empowering than kelainan upaya? But it's actually, once you accept kurang upaya as my identity, disabled as my identity, um you look beyond that and you start seeing what you can do instead of what you cannot do. It's kind of a different way of thinking. It's kind of hard to explain. So that's from my life experience. I think dah lama sangat kot. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
And I add a little bit on that. Okay, so basically, based on what Miss Yana said, is true actually. The word disabled actually, it kind of I can consider our status. Another thing about disabled, like I mentioned earlier, the word disabled itself means that people that disables us, not ourselves that is becoming disabled. Even though in Malay we call it kurang upaya, it means it is our ke our our upaya is kurang. But it's not necessarily to be translated that way actually, because in English it was translated as the discrimination. It what makes the people become disabled. If you uplift the discrimination, then you will become not becoming disabled lah, in a way of saying. But let's us assume that these things are quite controversial in the nature. Yes, it is. Both words are controversial in nature, in which it doesn't have a definitive definition. For example, based because why I say that is, in some research, it says both disabled and also impaired, both, because if you see in the definition, includes both. It includes impairment and also disability. But academically, they said it to become two distinct things. That's why I said that's why sometimes we do need to have something that we cling on the concepts, for example. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
can
think that's the thing that I want to add. Yes, Yana.
yeah, can I just short add on? Sorry, just something important to remember. Sometimes we talk about OKU, orang OKU dengan orang normal. Does that mean that OKU bukan
Yes.
normal? Are we not God's creations too, right? So something to think about because this is why we use the term kalau dalam BM OKU dengan bukan OKU and disabled and non-disabled instead of disabled and normal.
Yep.
So yeah, that's something to talk about and think about. Yep.
Yep. And also when we said normal or not normal, which assumptions of normalcy that you use actually? That is my question back to the person who use the word normal and not normal. Are you saying that we are abnormal because of our disability? Because that's just doesn't fit the terms. Like I mentioned earlier, lah, that is not disability, that's impairment. But we should not be identified by our impairment per se, but we should be identified by our disability, which the discriminations that we face. And also, I can say that in the sense, if you want to see about I don't want to say this, but if you want to see the person based on their impairment, you should see. For example, if that person is working, you should see what is the limit of this person. And you cannot equate say to be like I mentioned earlier lah about the ableism. Okay, you lain boleh buat, kenapa you tak boleh buat? For example, because even as a non-disabled, all of us have different limits. So does the persons with disabilities. So does the disabled person. It doesn't matter. And also, a little note on special needs. Why it is controversial for me to say, but I still want to say it anyway because I believe that all of us should know. Uh, because the disabled is not ourselves disabled. It because we are disabled by the society. And also in terms of our needs are not that special. We eat, you eat. We sleep, you sleep. We learn, you learn. No different, right?
Yeah. Also,
Maybe the
it
processes are
actually
different, but it's the same
yeah
thing.
actually it also cause some bullying in schools because when a person when this was uh, shared with us when the person were allowed special needs, right? And the friends ask, "Why are you so special?" See, they don't understand because when once you attach the word special, it means differently in their mind, in their thinking, right? So just
Yeah, it means
yeah,
privilege.
yes, and it's not privilege. It's not. I tell you. Yeah. Okay. That's it. I
Yep.
I think we over we over talk already. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Miss Yana and Mr. Nasrul. So it can be said that people should aware about the PwDs as everyone should be treated with empathy. And being sympathetic is not enough, but empathy should be emphasized. So I have a question for Sir Nasrul. And in your opinion, how far is the public in Malaysia aware and concerned of PwDs? It cannot be denied that there are many programs that have been done by the government and NGOs like Boleh-ness itself, such as webinar, Twitter Spaces, and others. Yet some people still not treating PWD this well. Any opinion on this?
Okay, I'm sorry. There's a little bit of disruption on my side. Technical disruption. Can you hear my voice? Awesome. Okay, so basically, in terms of even though there are lots of programs that have been done, but yet people still treat the persons with disabilities differently. You know why? Because my question back is what do they promote? What do is it welfare? Is it they just for example menyantuni OKU? For example, like oh we should menyantuni, okay, we should help them, they are not capable of doing themselves. That is what sometimes the programs are. Oh, we have program bantuan for the OKU, and this person and this person, I don't want to mention names, I don't want to mention who lah, you guys can guess what do I mean. Oh, this person, oh, he takes picture with the person's with the disabled, yeah, disabled friendly, or we iktiraf, or we acknowledge the disabled, but did they really do it for the sake of the disabled person, or they have any other agendas? Because if you actually, these things you can see in even in the Facebook, even in every social medias, sometimes they are promoting just to mention that we are disabled friendly, we are care for the disabled, while they are not really care for the disabled. They just want their prestige, or they just want their names to be, oh, okay, dia ni baik, he's good with the disabled people, we should go for him, we should go for her, for example. And when we are talking about that, when we're talking about it, so if their intention is pure, if they, I'm sorry to say this, but if their intention is really they want to advocate for the disabled, if they want to advocate for the disabled person, they have to consider what does it mean by inclusive itself, what does no one left behind means, what does it really constitutes of. For example, if you are saying about persons with disabilities, because if you understand what does it mean, then you will know how to promote inclusivity. Then if they are not promoting inclusivity, the effects that I'm not saying only Boleh Space, every other disabled people organization, DPOs, the NGOs and whatnot, they cannot, uh, our effort will be useless lah if they use a program that give another different perception about the disabled, rather than give the same thing that the DPOs gave. For example, like, oh, we should menyantuni OKU. I'm sorry to say, but medias nowadays, they always portray the disabled as the person who is unprivileged, who cannot do anything on themselves. There is a specific programs. They always tackle the disabled, not the real community that they should be tackled. So it it hardens the concept of, okay, the disabled should be this and that. And I am really sorry, I think I have to mention this, but I cannot mention which program lah. It portrays that, oh, if after you become disabled, oh, no one wants you, huh? Really, are you sure? Because we're still humans, we are still humans, we do have our rights as a human being. Even in Islam, we do have our rights in Islam. Like, for example, as a Muslim, as a Muslim with another Muslim, as a Muslim with another non-Muslim, as a non-Muslim with a Muslim. There, we just didn't call it rights. We call it adab. We call it the muamalah. The in Malay we call it tata cara perhubungan sesama manusia, or English we call it social interaction. So those things actually is fairly important for us to have it well. So on what ground that they promote these programs as disabled friendly if they are not? That is a question. And another question is, uh, if, for example, because you asked that it cannot be denied that, yeah, there are lots of programs, but how many of the programs give impacts? That is another question lah. This is a question for everyone. How does the program produce its impact? Because if you want to make an impactful, you have to know what you want to do. Most of the time they just do it, and it becomes a shock sendiri punya program. It becomes just, oh, okay, we have done a program, we have helped the disabled, for example, like, and also in the end nothing really happens. In the end, the treatment is still that thing, the same treatment that we faced. And also, sometimes it's the way they promote it lah. It's the way they portray it. It comes back to the basic. It really comes back to the basic. Either you want to say that the persons with disabilities are discriminated, you have to make people aware. The first thing is you have to make people aware. Awareness is the most important thing before you make something inclusive. Because if people not aware, then they will ask why we should be inclusive, why we should spend our money. Because they don't know. Like, we said if they make it inclusive from early on, it is they can save more rather than make it inclusive after it. For example, the in terms of transportation, public transportation, in terms of the ramps, the curb cuts, for example, you have made the curb cuts at this shape. It's not really that aligned, for example, like Yana, and they thought it is a good thing, but they didn't really know because they only test it at that time, and not everyone who is disabled are using it at that time. Only, for example, only one. Maybe they can say, oh, it is okay for me. Maybe it's okay for him, but for the other persons with disabilities, how? So sometimes they go for shock sendiri. That is the most problematic thing. And also why yet some people doesn't treat PWDs well is because of they doesn't know how to treat the PWD. So the first thing this program should be done is to advocate, to educate on how we should treat the persons with disabilities to be fair, to be adil. We call in Islam to be equitable, because it is more important for us to be equitable. You treat us like you want to be treated, for example. Because I always say that if you want to people to respect you, you have to respect each other as well. That's the thing lah. That the non-disabled sometimes they didn't understand. They doesn't respect us. That's why we are furious about it. That is why. So please make sure if you want to know what is how to make your program inclusive, you have to ask the person first. You have to acknowledge yourself how before you even make the program. Because if not, then it's just a waste of money lah. Uh, okay. Thank you. I think I talk a long thing and it's just becoming apa tu? Dah jadi macam uh, belete dah pula. Sorry for that. For our viewers, sorry if you are tired listening me lettering you all day. No worries. I will not letter you after this. I will go back with the flow, inshallah. Thank you.
It's okay, Mr. Nasser. It's very insightful, like I say, because sometimes they do the program just for the fame and famous and just want to, I mean, like include the disabled person and that's all. They don't give any impacts or and what matters is the impact itself. Uh, we need PWDs to be included in others matter. So for the next question, I will ask both of the speakers. So, what is your opinion on inclusion for PWDs, and do you have any experience disregarding disability inclusion anywhere? Like I believe
It's 17
it
hours.
might raise some of the challenges and barriers that disabled persons might commonly face due to the lack of public knowledge and awareness. Maybe Miss Yana can start first.
Um, yeah, I was okay. I'm physically disabled and I am not able to perform certain tasks or maybe uh, even move around by myself certain times. And I will always have my caregiver or care partner, my sister, with me. So yeah, so what happens is that people tend to talk to her instead of to me, the person in the wheelchair, which doesn't make sense because I can talk a lot, like you all just saw. So, because I find that very insulting. Personally, I find it very insulting because it's the ableism again. People think that oh, this person is in a wheelchair, he or she must not be able to talk to make decisions on their own. So what usually happens is that my sister will say, just ask her, talk to her. So it also must the people supporting the disabled person must also be mindful of all this, because sometimes, um, like for example, you go to a counter and you reach the counter first or something like that, because I prefer to roll myself at times. So once I reach there, then my sister will already be talking to the counter staff, but it's not her task that what she's doing. You know, it's my task, so I know more about it. And not everyone, not every front counter people, I can't remember what you call it, but uh customer service, is it called customer service front counter?
Andes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
front desk, yes, front
And
desk. Not all of them got training to on how to be inclusive properly. Like for example, if you see a person in a wheelchair, always assume that he or she can talk to the person first, look in their eyes. If they can't look in their eyes, just talk in their direction. If you see that there's no response, or the caregiver care partner is saying answering on behalf, then you look at the name. Because something that I noticed very clearly once I became disabled, I became less than. I became dismissed. It's like I don't matter. So that's not nice. I was depressed for a bit once I become disabled, because it was a very big change, right? But Alhamdulillah, thankfully with the support of friends, my family, and God's will, Alhamdulillah. Berkat doa mak. So we need to learn how to navigate our own lives as disabled, but at the same time, we will very much appreciate the support of the community surrounding it. Because if say the example that I gave just now, if you get it one time, that's fine. I mean, kind of fine. It's okay, still kind of okay lah. If you get it every day, if you go to work every day, if you get it every time you go to the hospital, yes, when you go to the hospital, so you sometimes get people who ignore or dismiss the person in the wheelchair. So that becomes very tiring. It becomes very energy sapping, very mentally hard to accept. So by just being inclusive, it creates an inclusive um, uh, community, and the disabled people in that community will feel included. So yeah, just by being um, nicer and being aware of how to communicate um, with disabled people would help us. And yeah, we are just the same as other people. Like for example, when you vote, um, have you voted? Are you still too young to vote, Sarah? And oh, okay,
We
because
can
yeah,
vote
just
now.
okay, yeah, because when you vote, you get one tanda hitam, jari bertanda hitam. We do too. So our vote matters, right? And kita masih juga di apa? Dihisap amalan kita, amalan as hamba Allah. So you are still the same. Kita sebahagian daripada hamba Allah. Um, uh, just soalan apa tadi dah? So sorry. Oh yeah. So lack of public knowledge, right? So one thing I noticed that uh, when I started going out, once I was well enough to move around, it was very hard to find places that I can visit, because a lot of the places in Malacca where I am is not disability accessible. It's not wheelchair accessible. Okay. If there's a ramp, the ramp is like macam bukit apa entah. It's not safe for us to go up. And if the ramp is fine at a normal at a safe gradient at an accepted universal design gradient, right? There will be uh, another car or another something maybe a tong sampah park right in front, and that's not accessible. So all this needs awareness, but if we have awareness but not how you say it, not 100% of the people. Okay, if you ask anyone using OKU parking, they are aware that they're not supposed to use it, but they still use it. So what's to stop them from using it? Only penalties. If they are not if there are no penalties in Akta OKU, um it doesn't help us. And what I can say right now is I see a lot of programs being done by the OKU associations themselves instead of like we see vaccine. OKU had to organize themselves to set up their own vaccine center in Selangor. It was under our senator Dato' Ras Adibah. So that's one of the things that we see that penat tau nak kena fight this every day. And we just hope that if Akta OKU is reviewed and properly done and enforced, all this discrimination tak ada, so that we can live as part of the community together instead of having to use the ramp at the back of the house, for example, at the back of the mall. I had the experience of having to go selate between parked lorries at the back of a mall because there were no other access. So and that's still quite that mall is still quite new, so how is that possible? It's just there must be the guidelines are there, MS 1184 Malaysian standards on universal design, MS 1184, as well as there's another one on public roads or something like that. I can't remember. I think it's MS 1331. So those two standards exist, but people can choose not to do it because there are no penalties. So yeah, something to think about lah. Why are there no penalties? Who's getting away with the no penalties part? Yep, thanks.
Mr. Nasrul, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, thank you for asking me, Sarah. Okay, so basically my thoughts, there are some thoughts about that actually. I can say that in terms of experience is regarding disability inclusion anywhere and also common challenges, I would like to answer the common challenges. Okay. My first answer for this question is always, we always face discrimination every day. It's like, for example, we can say that our orang kata apa, makanan asasi is nasi. So we face discrimination as we eat rice. It means every day. Sometimes like if it's not taxing our energy, it's okay. But it's taxing our energy. So we are very tired about this actually. First tired physically lah. Because for example, for me I am a physically disabled, and also I have to go to stairs, for example, two level of stairs to go to work every day for 8 months. Can you imagine? That's that is one of the discrimination that I face. And also, actually, I saw in the comment, if you allow me to answer the question that Brother Muhammad Nazrin asked, how do we encourage the disabled into working sectors? As we all aware, there's still lack of facilities to cater with people with special needs. Let me correct it a bit. Persons or people with disabilities. When it comes to officers, it feels like an indirect discrimination, Actually, you know what? There is a direct discrimination. It's not indirect. There is a direct discrimination towards the persons with disabilities, because if you yes, we know, we are aware. I think everyone aware. For example, the place that I go every day for the 8 months, there are stairs. But how to cater for this? How to tackle this? One is, if possible, make that place we call accessible by the means of MS 1183 and MS 1184, and also following the Universal Building Bylaws UBBL 34A. Correct me if I'm wrong, Yana. And also by following those recommendations, and also if you want to make that workplace inclusive enough, please do make sure that it have a elevator lah. Even though it's three story, for example, the building itself, the shop plots itself, please do make sure there is uh elevator. That is one thing. Another thing is, when you want to go to the place, please make sure the first thing, you have the curbs or you have the ramps. Is it the curbs mean you cut the uh the jalan in front, the way in front of the road, you cut it with the gradient that is stated in the MS 1183, 1184, and also the UBBL itself. So you have to follow that. And also, it is a direct discrimination. It's not indirect actually. Because if you say indirect discrimination, it sounds like this. Um, people or persons with disabilities, or disabled person, they can you say that, oh, they also can work like the non-disabled. So we should give them with the assessment, or you can say, if you want to assess someone's work performance, you assess it the same with the non-disabled. For example, I based on my own experience, there is something that I need to process around 80 documents per day, not 18, 80, 80 documents per day. And also it takes a toll on me as well, because I cannot sit for too long, I cannot stand for too long. Because sometimes, like today, if you see, I have to lay back, for example, during when Yana's doing the talking. So that's one of the reason lah. And also because if I lay back during my time of talking, you can't see me lah. Because I saw just a small picture of me because of that. So basically, uh, we do have our limitations, but uh, it is actually important, and it's our rights to, what you call that, to be accommodated with the related with our limitations. Because in the first place, basically, yes, we can, but it's not necessarily to be uh I can say as productive as, because productive is, I can say, it is subjective. It can be subjective, because when it comes to persons with disabilities, you have to see what do you mean by being productive. Is it quantitatively? Is it qualitatively? Is it the quality or quantity which is important? What do you want? If you want the quantity, maybe I say maybe they cannot fulfill in one day because of the limitations, and maybe because of that, you are saying that that they are not as productive as the non-disabled. But if you see it from the another qualitative way, because quantitatively doesn't mean in terms of money lah, in terms of anything related to working, does not only, for example, if you can do the work correctly, rather than you do it wrongly, which means lesser quality, but you get, okay, say it like this. More documents can be done, but there are some errors in the document. Or you want to minimize the errors, but as long as you can, I can say that you can do the things. So basically, in a way of saying, for sure that you choose, if you can choose quality over quantity lah. Because in terms of, if there is lots of errors, for example, you are working in a sector that you cannot do much errors. So to minimize these errors, you have to see it, because the person who are doing it is human. They are humans. All of us do errors. Human error is the most common error, because if you give the computer to compute, for example, they can compute it without errors. Computer are really really good to do something without errors. If you are treating a person like a computer, will it be humane? No, right? So you to make sure that the productivity is sustainable, then you should measure it qualitatively, because humans are great to make quality work, but they have to be allowed to make that. They have to be their rights fulfilled, for example, and also they have to be accommodated even as a non-disabled. For us ourselves, we do have times that we are not productive, right? So the disabled also, they have their time that, not to say not productive lah, I can say not, for example, you are not well, we are not well, that is normal for everyone, not for the non-disabled or disabled. Both are normal for everyone. But if you are disabled, or if you I can say you have some sort of disability, you have to be allowed, because it's their rights. And uh, can you imagine, right? For example, even as a non-disabled, I have been forced to work 20 days straight without any cuti, we can say. Even it's Sabtu, even it's weekends, I have to work for 20 days straight during the FMCO, and there are no medical protection, for example, in terms of the insurance. The company insurance doesn't protect us, because we are contracts. So the people who are in the contract sector, they experience more discrimination per se. So to encourage the disabled into the working sector is to make the working sector accessible physically first. First is physical accessibility is the utmost important. For example, as simple as, based on the research that I have done with my research team during the first semester of our postgrad, what we found is, it's the simple as toilet. For example, most of us doesn't bother. Oh, toilet, tak apalah, toilet dekat mana-mana pun tak apa, boleh pergi toilet. uh, but for the persons with disabilities, especially for those who are using wheelchairs, that is the first thing that they thought. I didn't say this. The interviewee say this. The first thing that I look is toilet. Because of why? Because of, he knows that most of the places are not accessible. So he have to ask about the toilet. Even though it seems like merapu lah nak tanya pasal toilet apa semua. No. It's important because there is needs. It's not special needs, like I say. It's not special needs. It's needs. It's a necessity for all of us to go to the toilet. For example, because if it's special, then only what you call it, only us go to the toilet. You didn't go to the toilet. No, everyone go to
Can
the
I?
toilet.
Yeah, I
So
know
no
we
such
are
thing as
running out of
special
time.
needs. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes,
I know
Yana.
we're, yeah,
Sorry for taking the time, but yeah, I think it's important. Okay.
yes.
Back to you, Yana.
Yeah, what I like to add on to what Nasrul said, but it's a quick add on, inshallah. Um, so how do we encourage the disabled into working sectors? Like Nasrul said just now, accessibility. If you have a ramp, you must make sure that the if a disabled, physically disabled person who is a wheelchair user um can use the ramp but then can't use there's no accessible toilet, tak guna juga. So accessibility, but at the same time accessibility is not just about the physical thing, it's also about uh, how to say it, in terms of assistive technology, because a lot of people are unaware that they are blind programmers. Do you know that they can use this technology called let me type it up, screen readers. So screen readers is how they can use for example their phones or their computers. So um, they instead of looking at it, they look at it through their ears. But unfortunately, in Malaysia, most websites and apps are not accessible. It can't. It's if you check Google, it's very simple. There's no happening like pop up go there lah, nak kena klik sana sini. No, it's very simple. That means that it's accessible by screen reader users and also by people who are physically disabled who are not able to use the mouse or a touch screen. So those technologies are called assistive technologies. So again, the how to support and encourage disabled into working sector, accessibility, assistive technology, and support based on the individual's needs. Uh, like sometimes it's possible that a person is able to not need to use a disabled toilet, right? An accessible toilet that has the grab bars and all. Sometimes it's enough you just having a sitting toilet, but it totally depends on the individual. There's no one single answer, but if you use universal design, say that that particular worker move on to another job, you have another disabled employee who can also work there. Or for example, if the boss terjatuh ke, masa main futsal terselir ke, ada have to do surgery for a while, have to use wheelchair for a while, he or she can still use the accessible toilet, right? So, and one thing we've been stressing at Boleh Space is that with long COVID comes a lot more disabled people. And we are heading towards an aging nation, right? So it's estimated that 17%, this is based on WHO calculation, is estimated there's 17% elderly people who are still working sometimes. I mean, not all 70% are working. I'm just saying that elderly counts from what's the age, Nasrul? But basically, once you reach the elderly age, you get, yeah, you get acquired disabilities. It's harder for you to listen, and sometimes your knees hurt a lot more, so you can't climb the stairs, but you can use the ramp. Yes. Right. So by including disabled people and aging aging persons, right, you will be more accessible to everyone, and just um, like you're not leaving anyone behind. Say for example, a person is a parent is bringing her child in her stroller, can still go up the ramp. Tak payah nak kena dokong angkat step. Dokong angkat step. I've seen that before and it's still working. It's still happening. In certain places, people don't repair lifts often enough. I mean, well, why aren't they maintaining lifts if it's there and it's a public infrastructure? All that because public infrastructure, public transport is really needed if a non-disabled need to use the public transport to get to work. A disabled person need the public transport to be accessible for them to go to work. So it's a complex issue. It's not just about how do you encourage disabled. Are you encouraging, are you enabling or disabling, like Nasrul said, like a disabling environment or disabling society? So yeah, that's from me. Thank you.
Thank you for both our speakers. What can I say is that people should be mindful towards people with disabilities and never make their own assumptions. We are not, they are not less, but we are just the same. And and in your opinion, for next question, I will like to ask Mr. Nasrul. In your opinion, how do we engage with PwDs in ethical manner without hurting their rights? Because, like, I think you said before this, some people use a different terms instead of disable. Maybe they tend to think like this is the right way to say to disabled person, but they get it wrong. So how do we educate and how do we engage in ethical manners without hurting their rights? So, Mr. Nasrul?
Okay, sorry. So basically, what can I say from the question is it's simple. First, tanya, or first you ask. Second, dengar, hear and listen. And third, okay, hear and listen to what we say lah, not hear and listen to everything. Okay. So the third one is take action lah. Lepas you dah dengar. Hmm. The three things. Those are just the thing that if you want to make sure that you what you do is considered inclusive, or I can say to consider not hurting our rights. That's all from me.
Thank you, Sir Nasrul. Okay, maybe this is the last question. As we can see on social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and numerous injustices and discriminatory incidents have happened to PWDs. And how could we help as a witness to the incident? Maybe Ms. Yana could answer this question.
Actually, I think I'll let Nasrul answer this.
All right, Sir Nasrul, could you explain on this?
Okay, as we are running out of time, I can say that the answer is also simple. If you happen to witness it, feel free to tag us and also to inform us via DM, or you can just if possible, if you are on Twitter lah. If you're on Twitter, it's better for you to send to us via DM. And also, if you can tag us, also it should be fine. Because to tackle these injustices and discriminatory incidents, also maybe if you want, you can report. But I think in terms of reporting to the social media won't do much, because they will say, "Oh, this is not again our community guidelines." That is their standard answers, right, Yana? So basically, you can inform us if we can at that particular time, because I mentioned this thing is very taxing us. So we will, yes, you can also email us at bolehspace@gmail.com. Yes, you can email us actually at bolehspace@gmail.com. Maybe for those who wants to report this, okay, you can just jot down this email. I will read it word by letter by letter. BOLEH, boleh, um tak ada jarak, space SPACE @gmail.com. Boleh space @gmail.com. Okay, you can email it to us as soon as you see that thing happens, and we will try our best to assist you to tackle this issue, inshallah. Okay, back to you, Yana.
Actually, can I maybe correct a bit? Because not as soon lah, because sometimes we're a bit slower to reply, especially if because all of us do this voluntarily, right? Certain times we are not as fast as the online social media community. um, if you think people are not acting fast enough, then you can tell us, because it can be a bit depressing to get those kind of tags all the time. So sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Indeed, it is. True, it is.
So I think that's all for today's questions. Um, I hope that our speakers are still doing okay because I can see that there's one questions because it is time for Q&A session. So there's one questions from Sister Fakira. So it says that it is possible that this year, so would you have any disabilities targeting program to be held? So
Uh,
speakers,
is that programs for disabled people? Is that the question?
yeah.
Or okay. So we actually do monthly programs. So you can just follow us on this space. But the program is mostly to raise awareness. For now, we are still looking for grants, to get to organize programs that are more for the public, for everyone. For right now, it's more, via um, getting invites such as this and working with fellow organizations. And yeah, so for Boleh Space specifically, we have our monthly programs, but this month haven't updated yet. So just follow Twitter at Boleh Space, Twitter bolehspace.com, Twitter Boleh Space. Okay, just follow Twitter Boleh Space, and yeah, we will update there. Thank you.
Yeah, you can go to twitter.com/boleh space. Back to
Um,
you, Anis or Dila.
Can you hear me?
Oh, Yana, you have
no, I have to cook, so I have to go. Um, thank, thank you
You
so much for having us.
and thank you for Miss Yana and Sir Nasrul such as fruitful insight for our webinar today. And thank you very much. And it's really a perfect webinar today. And we believe today's webinar creates an opportunity to disability inclusion. And having listened to our guest speakers, I am more convinced that this has helped us to make sure that persons with disabilities should never live behind and remembered. But now is definitely our opportunity to aware with disability inclusion and make sure that PwDs could be protected and empowered. So for viewers, thank you for staying around with us from the beginning, but we have come to the end of our webinar. And lastly, I would like to thank all for joining our webinar session today on protecting and empowering people with disabilities. We would like to give a special thank you and applause for our guest speakers today. And we hope you all enjoyed our webinar today and get a lot of benefit and giving awareness about disability inclusion. That's all from us and have a good day ahead. Assalamualaikum. Bye bye.